We break down your Dynasty rosters on this channel. You guys know what it is. Dynasty Decisions, episode number 78, talking about rebuilding, contending, rookie picks, trades, all that good stuff. You guys send in your teams, and we talk about them. Before we get into it, as always, leave a like if you guys enjoy. Subscribe to the channel if you are new around here, and comment down below any of your thoughts. Danny, how you doing today?
Doing well, doing well. And yeah, just ready to roll up the sleeves, get into your Dynasty teams. As always, don't want to waste too much time. Get straight into the intro.
All right, so let's get right into the first team. First team coming to us from Tano, which is a member of our Mother Flocker tier over on the new site, flockfantasy.com, promo code FSE for all of our rankings, for all of our bonus content. 6 months free when you sign up for an annual package, and you also get 30% off when you use our promo code, and you'll get access to, first priority Dynasty Decisions, a Tone Setters group chat that me and Danny have on noties on all the time, so you guys got full access to us, so definitely check that out. Link down below in the description if you are interested. But Tano is the Mother Flocker tier, so he skips the line permanently. One quarterback, PPR, tight end, premium type of league here. Justin Herbert is his main QB with Mac Jones, Zach Wilson, Sam Howell there in reserve. Breece Hall, Ezekiel Elliott is his main running backs. Their wide receivers, Amon-Ra St. Brown, DK Metcalf, Drake London, Treylon Burks, and some other dudes there. Kyle Pitts, Darren Waller, Gesicki as his tight ends. He has the 101 and the 102. Again, one quarterback format, 205, 312, 407, and then he has an extra first in 2024, an extra second in 2024, and it looks like an extra pick in each round of 2025 as well. Also has some trades listed here, but what are your thoughts so far on the team and kind of the foundation that he's built so far?
Yeah, I mean, the foundation's great. You got your main quarterback pivot there, running back. I mean, you got Breece Hall that you can build around, as well as the 101 this year, which is a key attribute to this team. 4 wide receivers deep at this point, unless I'm missing anybody listed below. And at tight end, you do have the gold standard himself, Kyle Pitts. So overall, I think it's a very well-constructed team. You have multiple picks within 2024 and 2025 as well, along with, like I kind of referenced, the 101 and the 102 this year. So in terms of this team, what are your thoughts on the two trades? We'll get into the trades as well. He said he made the first one before Zeke got cut, and the second one was made after the Waller trade. So first one, 105, 201, and a late second to go get Amon-Ra St. Brown and Ezekiel Elliott. Ezekiel Elliott in this trade, for the most part, just kind of fodder added to this trade. In a one-quarterback league, you're ready to compete. You want to try to, maybe have a house money type of year with the pick equity they have in the future years. I'm all for getting Amon-Ra St. Brown here, because basically you're looking at it, you're getting the 5th player out of Jahmyr Gibbs. Bijan's obviously going to go with your pick, but Jahmyr Gibbs, JSN, Jordan Addison / Quentin Johnson, paying a couple twos to get a guy that we pretty much figure is going to be a top 6-ish, top 8-ish type of wide receiver in redraft right now. I don't mind making that move, not to mention he's still young, 23 years old. So I like Amon-Ra St. Brown there.
Yeah, I mean, you got a top 10 startup pick, basically, or top 15 to 20 startup pick at the latest in a one quarterback format. And Amon-Ra St. Brown for, like you said, the 3rd best receiver in the class, maybe Gibbs, something like that, who will still probably be valuable, but that 201 and the late second, probably not, super valuable pieces. I probably wouldn't have acquired Zeke personally, but he's just a throw in this kind of deal, yeah. I'd imagine. So I like the move there. And then the second trade, you trade away your own 2024 second. He's just probably about mid, given his team, strength and stuff. And he got Darren Waller to add to his tight end core. Now, knowing that you had Kyle Pitts and knowing that this was the type of team that would be a house money type of year, I probably wouldn't have went out and acquired Waller. I think at face value, it's a good trade. I just probably would have just stuck with what you had and just kept the pick and, gone into next year, spent that 2024 second or whatever. But I think this just screams house money. This team is just totally house money. You got Bijan as a rookie running back. Breece Hall is going to be, coming off of an ACL tear. Realistically, you could probably compete if things break right for you this year, but most likely you're going to be competitive in 2024 once you add those the firsts that you have in that year. And then he also has a couple questions here that we can list off.
For sure. The one pivot that I honestly, I do like the Waller trade because it gives you more options, right? Hypothetically, again, it's a tight end premium as well. So a mid-second round pick for a guy that in a tight end premium, if he stays healthy, can give you a lot of production. You have Gesicki on the bench too. Would you see maybe if the CeeDee Lamb owner would be interested in Kyle Pitts? Would you make that type of move for this team?
I mean, that's possible. I think I'd be more inclined to use the 102 if I was going to go after a guy
Fair.
like CeeDee Lamb, or maybe, the 102 and another piece can get you to like Jonathan Taylor or CeeDee Lamb, AJ Brown, somebody like
Makes
that.
sense.
Because if you build out your running back core a little bit more, like if you added Jonathan Taylor, let's say 102,
Yes.
205, and like a small pieces gets it done for Jonathan Taylor, and you have Brees Hall, Jonathan Taylor and Bijan Robinson as your main running backs, with Herbert as your main quarterback in a one quarterback league, Kyle Pitts and Waller at tight end, and a good enough wide receiver core. Maybe you could use one more depth piece, but that's about it. You could compete with this team right away. So I would say like evaluate this kind of mid-season and see where you're at. Definitely 102 would be the pick that I would shop. He asked like, should I go JSN or Gibbs with 102? He said he's been watching both of them on film. He really likes both players. I would go with your top receiver personally in your situation, whether that's JSN or Jordan Addison. Sounds like it's JSN for you. So JSN to me would probably be the pick there at 102, but I also wouldn't say no to just shopping the 102 and seeing what kind of veteran you can get for it.
Yeah, you never know. You put the 102 on the block. Let's just say somebody super, super high on JSN. You mentioned the Jonathan Taylor type of deal. That would be a fine deal as well. I'd probably look even at a wide receiver. Maybe 102 plus 205 gets you Garrett Wilson. And at that point, you're already ready to get a young ascending wide receiver. Yeah, he's 1 year older than JSN at this point, and it's already proven that he could be an NFL stud. Obviously, the quarterback upgrade coming in whenever the Aaron Rodgers trade is fully finalized. A guy like Garrett Wilson, I think, would fit perfectly with this team. Keep that youth type of feel to this team while still being able to, get a productive piece in case, by midseason you get off to a hot start. Garrett Wilson's the wide receiver 4 in fantasy, and you at that point want to leverage your future picks. You're going to be in a better position. Let's just say first 8 weeks you open up 6-2, right? And at that point, you want to shop a cheap running back. Maybe, you want to add another wide receiver for depth. I really don't see many holes in this team, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. You could also go for a 2-for-1 too. If somebody really loves JSN, they might trade you like Chris Olave and Damian Pierce to help build out, your roster a little bit more. You still get yourself a young staple wide receiver, and maybe you add another productive running back to your team or something like that. If you want to actually, compete with this thing, I would say be patient with this team. But overall, I do think you have the flexibility to make a move here and there if you can get good value and turn this thing into a young, established contender that can compete for many years. So I think you're in a great spot. We could probably move on to the next team here, which is from Andy T7 321, who's also a mother flocker of ours here. One quarterback league with a super flex. So a super flex league, tight end premium as well. He has his team listed here. Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts is his top 2 quarterbacks. Those are like 2 top 5 startup picks there. So you love to see that. Austin Eckler, Dalvin Cook, Rashad Penny, Alexander Madison, Isaiah Pacheco. So a little bit older running backs there. T. Higgins, Hunter Renfrow, Brandon Cooks, Michael Gallup, Odell Beckham Jr., Sky Moore, and some other guys there. TJ Hawkinson as his main tight end there with a couple young upside pieces. Doesn't have any first-round capital this year, just the 206, 303, 309, and 409. Does not have any first-round capital in 2024 either. So this team starts off very, very strong, right, with the top 2 quarterbacks. Then you get to the aging running backs. Then you get to, outside of T. Higgins, not a whole lot going on at wide receiver, and TJ Hawkinson, who's a solid tight end. But this team's lacking depth is the first thing that kind of stands out to me.
Yeah, and I'll tell you right now, like you said, should I try to transition right now? Should I try to retool and you can get a 1+ for Eckler? The only players I'm really committed to on this team are Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts, and T. Higgins for the most part. At that point, after that, if somebody's willing to give you 1+ first for Eckler, maybe Dalvin Cook, maybe not as much as Eckler, but say you can get a 2024 first from a guy who maybe wants to push his chips in. Maybe he was a house money this year, wants to try to compete. You can get a 2024 first for Dalvin Cook. Try to build back up that 2024 first equity if you can, maybe at that point, because you're going to retool for a year. Maybe you go after your own 2024 first as well. Other than that, you have good building blocks. It's just, for the most part, your running backs are old and your wide receivers aren't quite deep enough to fully compete.
Yeah, it'd be tough to compete with this team, I think. You need a lot of things to break right. Like Brandon Cooks would have to be like at least a wide receiver 2 in fantasy. Hunter Renfrow would have to be like a PPR guy. Sky Moore would probably have to take a big step forward. Maybe OBJ has to sign. Like, there's just a lot going on at wide receiver here. And the only stable asset there is T. Higgins. And even at running back, too, even if you rolled into the season with the guys you have, Eckler looks like he might get traded. Dalvin Cook isn't really stable set into his workload. So even if you had to trade Dalvin Cook and Rashad Penny, who just signed to the Eagles, who's kind of like a sell high candidate at the moment, for you could get a 2024 1 potentially just for those 2 guys. I'd be willing to do it because you're offloading that production. Maybe it's the guy that has your first and you can get your own first back. That would definitely make a lot of sense there as well. So yeah, I kind of agree with your assessment that you're thin at wide receiver. You know, even though you want to like compete, and he said he wants to move up from 206 to get an early second because he loves Zay Flowers. To me, if you're in a non-competitive window, I'm probably not going to be selling assets to try and get a player that I like. If all it costs you is like 206 and 303 to get up to 202 and get Zay Flowers and you really love him, that's a fine price to pay. But for me, I would probably be more patient with this team and with this roster, and I'd be looking to offload my older pieces.
100%. I mean, if we're looking at the team as well, if this was, you know, a 2 wide receiver start, 2 flex type of league, you could maybe convince yourself you can scrounge up some depth at wide receiver and maybe run it back a year. But the fact that it's a 3 wide receiver start, 4 flex league, like if we're looking at your start, like obviously we don't want to project lineups right now, but ideally, because you know you're not going to have a lot of draft capital, because you know realistically there's not going to be too many needle movers added. If we were to look at your team, obviously Eckler and Cook would be your running backs, but wide receiver, your starting receivers are what? Higgins, Renfro, Cooks. Your flexes are what? Michael Gallup, Rashad Penny, maybe Odell Beckham signs where like there's a lot of question marks, and that's not even mentioning the depth, because at wide receiver, once those guys in your lineup, your bench is going to be like Romeo Doubs, Noah Brown, Jawan Jennings. So I just personally think, like we kind of alluded to, that retooling this, building up that wide receiver depth is going to be more beneficial for you in the long term.
Yeah, not to mention he doesn't have a third quarterback either. Not that you'd ever bench those two guys, but it'd be nice to at least have like a Mac Jones or something on your bench who could slide in a pinch if he needed to, if those guys went down with injury.
Sure.
So yeah, I think there's a lot of work to be done with this team. I probably wouldn't be married even to the quarterback assets. Like as much as they're building blocks and they're still young, Burrow and Hurts can fetch you a ton in a trade. And if you really wanted to build out a very, very strong roster, if somebody's willing to give you like 3+ first rounders for Joe Burrow and a young receiver or something like that, you might be willing to do something along those lines if it involves you enhancing your experience down the road.
Like maybe it's somebody who, you know, productive struggled their way a couple years, maybe have the 102 or 103 this year. And for Joe Burrow, maybe somebody's willing to pay, you know, 102 or 103 plus a 24 and 25 first. And like that would be the going rate for a guy like Joe Burrow. But for your situation, it gives you more flexibility to build back up your depth piece. And you still have a guy like Jalen Hurts to head your quarterback position.
Yeah, exactly. So I would agree with your assessment. Probably transition this into a productive struggle for the time being. We can move on to the next team here, which is from Chan Hughes, an avid submitter of Dynasty Decisions, a Flocker tier member there on the new website as well. 12-team Superflex tiered PPR league. So half for running backs, full 4 wide receivers, 1.5 for tight ends. And he has his team listed here: Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson, Geno Smith. That's kind of exactly what I was just talking about.
Yeah.
You need a third quarterback like a Geno Smith to at least get you by in bye weeks and, you know, in the situation that those guys go down. Running back core, pretty light as we like to do them here. Leonard Fournette, Jeff Wilson types. Wide receivers, Metcalf, Lamb, Garrett Wilson, Deontay Johnson, Mike Williams, Elijah Moore, Jacoby Myers, Adam Thielen, like some guys that you could definitely rely on there. Tight end, TJ Hawkinson mainly, and then some upside dudes there as well. Somehow as the 101 to go along with this team. So you're going to be adding Bijan Robinson. I would say this is the type of team that I'd be absolutely looking to, you know, transition from. It looks like you built out kind of like a productive struggle for a couple of years, and now you're ready to maybe put your chips into the middle a little bit and compete. At the 101, I'd be looking for Bijan Robinson 100%. And unless I'm getting a Godfather offer, I ain't moving off of him. 203, you can get probably a decent running back there as well. And 210, I'd probably just be throwing darts at running back this entire rookie draft. 101, 203, 210, and 406. Probably going to take 4 running backs with those picks as long as it lines up. Still has extra ones in 2024, not to mention that as well. 2024 first, his own, one that's potentially early to mid, one that's mid to late, one that's going to be late, and then a couple extra second rounders as well. So a lot of draft capital, a lot of foundational assets to build around with this team. I think you're ready to push this one.
Yeah, no, I agree. You add some running backs to this team, and I think you can compete this year. You're already adding Bijan for sure. Let's say 203, you get a guy like Kendre Miller, gets day 2 capital. Maybe like we did a mock draft yesterday. Maybe he goes 90th overall to a team like the Cowboys, and you can get him at the 203. Someone like that, 210, maybe another day 2 capital running back that people are maybe lower on falls, you can scoop up at that 210. Overall, just building out that foundation in that running back room and still having 4 first to leverage. Maybe, somebody's willing to hypothetically, by season start, let's say they have an injury in the preseason, they already were a middling team, and they're willing to give you a deal on a running back. At that point, that's something you can look forward to. Otherwise, for 2024 first, those are, wait and see house money type of picks that you can be able to deal.
Yeah, and I mean, even early in the season, you have a couple twos as well that you can move off of. If people are, wary about like Damian Pierce or something, his value's gone down because they draft like a day 3 running back or something like that. Maybe you can send like an early 2 for a guy like Damian Pierce to give you some running back depth as an RB2 type behind Bijan Robinson, who's going to lead out your core here. So I don't really think you need to do much here. He says, I think I'm very close to my competing window. I think I would probably agree with that statement. Once you add your rookie class to this team, you're probably looking at a team that can compete right away and at least be house money. But I honestly don't even know if I would wait for house money with this thing, because you got such a good wide receiver core, such great quarterback play. Maybe if Lamar Jackson holds out or something, that might turn you towards more of like a house money type of situation. But if he's on the field, then you should be ready to go, locked and loaded and ready to compete with this team. Agreed. So I probably would, once we get to August, probably make a move or two to make this thing kind of go over the edge. Because if you have Bijan, Kendra Miller, like you said, and maybe you get Izzy Abanikanda at like 210 with day 2 draft capital, and then you add, so you throw that early second rounder in 2024 for Damian Pierce heading into the season, or for somebody that's going to give you some production at the running back position, you will be ready to compete with this team. Yeah, no, I agree. And I mean, even if you want to shop a little higher, maybe you're first, because people aren't quite like fully into it, that you're going to be a force to be reckoned with because they're looking at your running back room. Maybe that first you can trade for a running back straight up. Maybe hypothetically a guy like Kenneth Walker, you add a little bit, maybe a 2 to that to get that done. Or maybe you look a little further down and a guy like Saquon Barkley, you can leverage straight up for a 2024 first. He's going to be a top 5 redraft running back. We kind of know what's going to be happening there. So I think one more high value type of producer at running back, this team, I have a hard time seeing it not winning. Yeah, exactly. So we could probably move on to the next team. But before we do that, we have to introduce a new partner of ours, Mint Mobile. You guys will be hearing about them. Definitely very excited. We talked about Aura in the last Dynasty Decisions video that we did. So definitely check out them as well. But Mint Mobile, you guys will be hearing a message from them right now. Lads, today I'm proud to introduce our new partner of the Fantasy Stock Exchange, Mint Mobile. With the cost of everything rising, I've been really focused on saving money where I can, which is why I'm super excited to share something you can do right now to save back on your wireless coverage. You might already know Mint Mobile from the Ryan Reynolds commercials, but let me tell you quickly how awesome their service is. Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for as low as $15 a month, and you don't have to sacrifice on any coverage, speed, or data. They're built on the nation's largest 5G network and keep costs low because they sell direct to you online. They cut out the retail stores and the salespeople. Thankfully, switching to Mint is also super easy. Thanks to their digital eSIM cards, you guys can sign up and activate immediately right on your phone from the comfort of your home. Keep your current device and phone number and easily switch services. And if your phone isn't eSIM compatible, Mint will ship you a new SIM card free of charge. A simple, fast, and affordable way to get the quality wireless coverage, Mint Mobile is the easiest way to save. Whatever you choose to use your savings on now is totally up to you. Now going to our link in the description of this video at mintmobile.com/fantasy-stock-exchange and get premium wireless for as low as $15 a month. Make the switch today and start saving money without sacrificing any quality. We appreciate Mint Mobile for partnering with us for today's video and giving all of us access to the most affordable wireless coverage. And speaking of the video, let's get right back to it. All right, so big shout out to Mint Mobile. Of course, go check out down below in the pinned comment, link in the description, all that good stuff. Austin B, another flocker of ours here. You guys can see the team on the screen there. Justin Herbert, Kyler Murray, Tua Tagovailoa, Sam Howell, quite deep at the quarterback position. Breece Hall, Antonio Gibson, some other guys there at running back. Terry McLaurin, Drake London, Treylon Burks, Jacoby Myers, and some other dudes there at wide receiver. And then Pat Freiermuth is his main tight end with some other depth guys. So, he basically sent us his team for Dynasty Decisions, but he's made a couple moves since. So he sent his team recently. He also said he wants our thoughts on the trades, which we'll get into in a second. And he said he can't confidently say he's the #1 team in his league because there are 2 monsters, but he thinks he's, probably at least close to like third or fourth kind of best team in the league. So let's talk about these trades here, and then we'll kind of evaluate the situation he's got. So the first trade that he made, he gave away Devontae Adams, Kenny Pickett, George Pickens, and the 103. And in exchange for all that stuff, he got Justin Herbert and a mid-2024 first. Honestly, if I'm looking at this right now, Adams and Pickens is probably a mid-first for me. Like both of them. Mid-first? Yeah, I mean, I might take maybe a 2 on top. There. Yeah, maybe a 2 short of that. The way I broke this down was like Herbert is absolutely equivalent to Pickett Adams and the 103. And then Pickens for the first is a wash. And
Yeah.
I would easily take the first because I'm not as high on Pickens, but some people are. So I think market value would dictate that that's still a win there. Either way, you factor in the stud factor of getting an elite quarterback, and this one's not even close in my opinion. So give me Justin Herbert. I also didn't mention that he has 107 and 108 in this year's rookie draft to add on to his team. On February 15th, he made another trade. He trades away Daniel Jones, Javonte Williams, and Elijah Mitchell in the 303 for Kyler Murray, Terry McLaurin, and a mid-first. So I probably would say that Kyler Murray was almost enough to get this done by himself.
Yeah, and even if you don't think that, like, you're basically getting Kyler Murray plus for Daniel Jones. Am I understanding this right?
I mean, Javonte Williams has value as well, but a mid-first to me and Javonte Williams cancels out.
And at that point, I'd also rather probably, I mean, McLaurin versus Mitchell in the 303 is probably about fair, but like either way, like if we break it down, no matter how we digest this, it's basically Daniel Jones for Kyler Murray in terms of that valuation. And that is the main difference maker here. Because as much as I like Daniel Jones, if you want to take the shot on him, 4th round, 5th round of a startup, I think it's worth the risk at that point. Like Kyler Murray's a top 15, top 12 overall asset in Dynasty. So getting him for this type of price, sign me the heck up.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, him having 4 2024 firsts now to work with on top of that he's already built is definitely great news. On March 6th here, he trades away Kenneth Walker, Calvin Ridley, Daniel Bellinger, the 305 and a third. And in exchange for that, he gets Treylon Burks, the 108, and an early projected first. Yeah. So to me, the early projected first honestly trumps like Kenneth Walker and Ridley plus the rest of the shit combined, let alone you get an exciting young wide receiver in Treylon Burks. You get the 108, which is still a decent pick. Like you're still going to get a solid player there. Potentially Will Levis with some quarterback equity. Maybe you get a Zach Charbonnet if he gets good draft capital, maybe a Quentin Johnston, somebody like that. So for me, I think this is a pretty easy win type of trade. And overall to like your other questions here, he also says like, I love JSN. I want to go get him. 107, 108, you're probably going to be out of the range where JSN goes. I'd imagine he goes off the board between 104 and 106 in most leagues. So if you wanted to move up a little bit, I don't hate the move, but to me, I would completely monopolize the 2024 class. If people want to give you their first for the 107 or the 108, that's probably what I'm looking to do.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, like this team is full house money. You have a very, very good team. Realistically, like, yeah, JSN's going to make a difference on your squad year one, but you already have pretty adequate wide receiver depth. You have a couple or a blue chipper at running back, 2 blue chippers at quarterback, and a very, very solid tight end. So somebody's willing to give you, that value increase, 107, 108 to get their first round picks in 2024, especially if you have an idea that it's going to be in the mid range. Sign me the hell up, because I mean, if you can monopolize that draft, you can get 6 firsts in that draft while still having a very, very good nucleus to this team. It's going to be scary for the rest of your league mates. So I'll just say that.
Yeah, a trade that I actually think is interesting that I would entertain is now that Tua Tagovailoa has his 5th-year option picked up, that might give some people some certainty in their minds. If you could take your 108 and Tua Tagovailoa and get somebody's like 104, 105 this year and their 2024 first out of it, then you could accomplish both goals. You get yourself, you re-roll Tua into a different quarterback prospect potentially in next year's class. You're going to have the capital to be able to at least address one quarterback in next year's class. And if that early first that you have is Caleb Williams, obviously we're laughing at that point. And you also get yourself JSN out of that trade. So I would potentially explore what you can do with Tua Tagovailoa as well. If you're really sold on JSN, I would probably try and use 107 or 108 plus a piece to get up rather than like trading a player straight up for that JSN pick. But for the most part, you just have so much flexibility here, right? Like you have the building blocks at quarterback, a building block at running back, some solid wide receivers. You're going to be adding at least 4 or 5 more great assets in 2024. So I would not rush this thing whatsoever. I would, even if you love JSN, I'm not, married to going after him. If you want to go after him, see what it costs. If it's too much and your league mates feel the same way about JSN, then to me, I would probably just stick with, the productive struggle that you've kind of built out so far. So great job. I think you're on the path to becoming a very, very strong team here. We can move on to the next team here, which is from Andrew, a 12-team Superflex start 10 full PPR. So quite a deep starting roster, only 11 bench spots. So a little bit shallower on the bench. Quarterbacks, Kyler Murray mainly there, and then Desmond Ridder, Heineke, some other guys there. Javonte Williams, Ramondre Stevenson, Damian Harris, Leonard Fournette, wide receiver Stephon Diggs, Devontae Adams, Brandon Ayuk, Darnell Mooney, and some other dudes there. And then TJ Hawkinson is his main tight end. I feel like TJ Hawkinson's been on literally every team that we've talked about so far. He doesn't have any 2023 picks. So by the looks of it, this looks like a team that you sold out to win. Is it a startup that just happened?
He just finished a startup draft with 2023 picks included. So, I mean, the fact that you were able to leave the startup with, a team that can compete now. Actually, you need a quarterback, but yeah, you have win now players at the very least, and you could sell them in season if you don't really want to win this year. The reason why I'm mentioning it is because 2024 mid-first, 2024 mid-first, 24 mid-first, and 2024 mid-first. Those are the picks I am eyeing right now. Because you don't have a second quarterback, I am looking to sell Diggs and Adams in season. The only players I'm really married to are probably, at least right now, are Kyler Murray, Javonte Williams, Brandon Ayuk. But I do think Stephon Diggs and Devontae Adams, once they're top 5 wide receivers in the season, you could sell off for a decent chunk. And maybe at that point, Javonte Williams, Ramondre Stevenson, be able to net you future first as well. And if you can monopolize that 2024 class, this team can get absolutely dangerous. But your number one priority right off the bat, I mean, the other option for those other veteran players, like I was going to say, is if you can get a quarterback too, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, I probably would steer clear of competing with this team just because I think the depth is lacking. Like I said, it's a pretty deep starting roster, so you're going to want to be strong at wide receiver, probably 5 or 6 deep, and also have a couple anchor running backs, and your best running back is coming off of an ACL tear. So I probably wouldn't try and compete with this team. For me, I think in the startup, I think your strategy was pretty sound. Like you said, 2023 picks were included, and you didn't want to overvalue those players, so you went after 2024 picks. But to me, I would have made selections at my draft picks that I actually made picks at that kind of aligned with my goal of competing in 2024. So yeah, Stephon Diggs and Devontae Adams probably slid too far going at the 4 or 5 turn, but I think there's a reason for that, right? It looks like your league is overvaluing youth, and the fact that, Adams and Diggs slid might be an indication that you're not going to get the value that you want for those players in season. But it also is possible that they could just be prisoners of the moment and they drafted the young players because it's the off season. And once we get to the actual season, then Diggs and Adams will have some real value. So you create a little bit more unnecessary work for yourself than I probably would have done in your situation, but you still have the ability. There's still great assets to have, and they'll be worth something. Once the games get kicked off and, Diggs is scoring like a 30 bomb or something like that, you should be able to offload those guys for at least a 2024 first.
Yeah, no, I agree. I do think like Corey kind of mentioned, you had 5 picks in that 4 or 5 turn. Great. You got 4 firsts. At that point, once you collected those first, once you built that level of equity in next year's class, I just don't like taking Hawk, Ramondre, Adams, Diggs, and Javonte, because the beauty of, if you could have gotten more picks, that's what I would have wanted, or maybe trade downs, get, somebody wants a 408 really badly because they want Stephon Diggs and they're willing to give you, their 6 and their 8 or their 6 and their 7 or something like that. Those probably would have been the utility moves that I would have looked to, because the beauty of the draft picks, whether it's a startup pick or a rookie pick, is they act as a placeholder. And they are the only asset in fantasy that is a placeholder. The beauty of a placeholder is a placeholder doesn't hold risk, because you haven't attached an actual value. You haven't attached an actual player name to that for it to inherit some risk. So for you there, going forward, future reference, you wouldn't take the win now players there. But if you can flip them in season and gain that liquidity back, this team can absolutely be beautiful by the end of the 2024 draft. Maybe you ship some of those picks then for quarterback, for win now help once you get that quarterback too, and Kyler's healthy. Yeah, I think 2024, 2025, this team could be very good. But your first priority, like Corey kind of said, is rid yourself of the win now talent.
Yeah, and the reason is because your top 2 assets are coming off of ACL tears.
Yes.
If Kyler Murray and Javonte Williams were healthy, and you could get Kirk Cousins for like a second, like an early second next year, and another wide receiver to this team or something, then it's possible that you could shove your chips in. But given that you got guys coming off of injuries, I'd probably just steer into the rebuild mode and not risk, screwing my liquidity long term, because I'm relying on a quarterback coming off an ACL tear and a running back coming off of a multi-ligament ACL tear. So I would probably, he asked basically, should I go win now or should I go rebuilding? I would steer to the rebuilding side of things, really monopolize that 2024 class if you can, get yourself an extra first. Maybe even if in 2025, if you're able to trade for those picks, if somebody's willing to give you like their 2025 first, second, and a young piece for Stephon Diggs in season, then do something like that as well. So still have some flexibility, but you definitely have some work to do. But I think you did a great job in the startup overall, collecting those first rounders. So let's move on to the next team here, which is from Scott Reese. It is a 2 quarterback, 2 tight end league. So Very high positional value on the onesies because they're twosies in this format here. And then he has a half PPR scoring format as well. He has Trey Lance, Derek Carr, Jordan Love, Desmond Ridder, and Sam Howell there. So a little bit of like a zero QB built out there. Nobody like a super, super high value outside of maybe Trey Lance. And then Miles Sanders, Dameon Pierce. I think that's Jamal Williams, but it could be Javonte, just given where he's listed in the order there. Khalil Herbert, Leonard Fournette, Devontae Smith, Drake London, Christian Watson, Deontay Johnson, Kadarius Toney, Elijah Moore, and then Okonkwo, Jelani Woods, and Cade Otton. So just a bunch of young tight ends there. So he has a bunch of trades listed. He made a bunch of high risk moves, is what he said, with some reward and even high reward in his opinion. He's kind of looking for advice on what to do next and critique on his trades. So let's get into some of the trades that he has listed here. For me, at face value, I would say your team is kind of lacking studs. Outside of like some of your wide receiver talent, there's no real studs on this team.
Yeah, there's not much in terms of the studs here. You got Lance, who's got the opportunity to be a stud, so I don't mind picking up Lance there. Other than that, like Devontae and London are very, very good. Christian Watson's a very, very good receiver as well, but no like Jefferson or Chase or Lamb or even like Garrett Wilson. Although you do have, of course, London and Devontae are just a hair behind a guy like that.
Yeah. So the wide receiver core is looking pretty stout, but the QBs need some work. Running backs need some work. Tight ends need some work. So recent trades in the past month that he made here, he received Derek Carr and he sold a mid-2024 first and third. To me, I get it. Derek Carr's a quarterback. He's got a lot of value insulation because he signed a big contract. But to me, I would have, given your team situation, I definitely would not have traded for Derek Carr.
No, I don't. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I don't like that. Older quarterback, not a needle mover at the position, going round 6, round 7 out of the startup. The mid-2024 first in the startup is already going before Derek Carr. So adding a third as well is just too steep for me.
Right. And realistically, if you were just looking for production, how much cheaper is Ryan Tannehill than Derek Carr for the same type of production, like from a points on the field perspective? Ryan Tannehill is probably going to be comparable to Derek Carr in terms of where he finishes in points per game next year. Yeah,
like I think Tannehill's market price at the most right now is probably a mid-2, probably a late 2. So
yeah, I mean it's a 2 quarterback format, so it's he potentially goes a little higher than that in terms of value. Maybe you have to give up a mid-2 and like a 4th for him or something like that. But I don't know, dude. I think I probably would have stuck with your first rounder there. He received Javonte Williams, Khalil Herbert, and Mike Williams in exchange for Michael Pittman Jr., Sky Moore, pick 28. I'm not sure if that means in the rookie draft. I think that's what it means.
Yeah. Pick 28 this year.
A late 2024 second. So basically an early 3rd, Sky Moore, Michael Pittman Jr. for Javonte, Herbert, Mike Williams. To me,
I like this one. I don't mind.
I like the move at face value, but I think inheriting the risk is not really necessary given where his team is at.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. But like, say worst case scenario, Javonte doesn't, start the season out. Like, going from Pittman to Mike Williams, I would rather Pittman a decent chunk, but at least, you're supplementing wide receiver production there. He's still relatively young. Mike Williams, 27 years old? It's not like he's like 32. So overall, in your situation, like Corey kind of said, you're not really ready to compete. So getting rid of a guy like Michael Pittman, who has more, value on the open market, especially post this year, probably would have been more beneficial. But hey, if Javonte Williams is ready and Javonte Williams shows that he's the stud that we saw at the beginning of last year and you could flip him, you might be able to get a package worth more than Pittman. So I don't mind that.
So then he also made a couple more trades here. He received Miles Sanders, Leonard Fournette for pick 15, which is like the 203, pick 29, which is, what is that? An early 3rd rounder as well, or a mid 3rd rounder. And then pick 36, also like a late 3rd rounder, early 4th, whatever. So again, just in your situation, I would not be acquiring productive pieces. It looks like you're trying to force a competitive window because you have like an older quarterback in Derek Carr and some of the running backs on your team are like potentially ready to compete as well, like Dameon Pierce. So I think you're being impatient is what I would say. And I would probably be looking to gain more value insulated options as opposed to like the solid pieces that have built out your team so far. Because you have a ton of solid pieces on your team at each position, but nobody that's really going to anchor your team for the next, 5 to 10 years. And I mean, a similar situation here is where you trade Mike Williams away and you get Dameon Pierce and pick 20, which is like a late 2nd rounder. And then you trade away an early 2nd rounder on the Mike Williams side. So again, you're inheriting a running back that could get replaced in the NFL draft, which is always going to come with risk. And it's, again, for the sake of trying to compete right away when I don't think your roster's quite ready for that. So I don't like the move necessarily to acquire Cooper, where you give up Mooney and pick 20, which I think is probably about fair value. But I just, in your situation, I wouldn't have gone after Amari Cooper. But I do like the move you made where you trade away Amari Cooper for Elijah Moore and Deontay Johnson, two younger wide receivers that are going to appreciate more in value. So the strategy to me is just a little bit all over the place. I think you should probably stick to what your goals are. If your goals are to compete right away, then I would probably go after some stud talent, but I don't think you have the capital to do so. So if it was me in your situation, I'd be probably trying to sell off some of the veteran pieces that I've acquired and acquire more draft capital and build for the future. It's tough because I know, like, in every fantasy league, the gut instinct is to compete and try and win the championship. Yep. But to me, I just think there's got to be a couple better teams in this league that are going to probably mess you up once you get to the fantasy playoffs if they have great quarterbacks, great running backs, all that kind of stuff. I just think this is a middling team.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. I feel like you productive struggled the first couple of years, and you just tried to rush things. I would have waited at least another year, kept that first, kept those picks that you gave up, and maybe saw, by next year, okay, what's my team looking like? How much risk do I hold? How do I transition that to potentially compete by next year? I just think you jumped the gun a bit.
Yeah, and you would probably need, especially at quarterback, you would need a lot to break right for your quarterbacks to suddenly become great, because even Trey Lance, who has the highest ceiling of all your quarterbacks, there's no guarantee that he's not very, very, very useless this time next year. Like, it's possible that happens. And I mean, Jordan Love, Desmond Ridder, Sam Howell, very, very, volatile assets, as much as I like some of those guys, like especially Sam Howell, but he could be reduced to nothing this time next year. And you kind of rationalize here and you're like, I really like these guys. I think they can be something. And that's fine when they're your depth and you have great positions at other, spots. But when you have to actually rely on those players, it's definitely not a situation that you want to find yourself in. So I think quite a bit of work to do. I would be looking to sell off a lot of your volatile assets. He says, I made a bunch of high risk moves. That's not usually the route that we like to take in Dynasty here. Make a couple calculated risks here and there, but my whole roster should not be high risk moves, in my opinion. So
agree with that.
Let's get into the final two teams of the video. These are free submissions. So if you guys submitted a team for free and you're wondering where you're at in the queue, both of these came from February 7th, and there's 37 teams ahead of them in the queue right now. So or after these guys in the queue. So if you submitted your team in like early March or whatever, probably going to be quite a long wait. Like I said, you can skip the line on the new website, FSE, promo code FSE at flockfantasy.com. Mother Flockers skip the line directly, and then the Flocker tier gets you, priority submissions. So Jeremiah's team here, back from February 7th, he has Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson, Geno Smith, Jimmy Garoppolo in a super flex format, Travis Etienne, J.K. Dobbins. Sorry, it is a one quarterback league, not a super flex format. Travis Etienne, J.K. Dobbins, Javonte Williams as his main running backs. Wide receivers, Justin Jefferson, Chris Godwin, George Pickens, Jameson Williams, Jahan Dotson, Calvin Ridley, Rashad Bateman. So Elijah Moore, very deep wide receiver core. Tight ends, George Kittle. Also somehow has the 101. I have no idea how you have 101 with this team. 201, 210. I would say that we don't need to spend too much time on your team, Jeremiah. You had a long wait for us to just tell you your team is very good. I mean, you're going to add Bijan to this team, and then you're going to have Bijan, Etienne, Javonte Williams, J.K. Dobbins as your top four running backs. In a one quarterback league, you have Watson, which is all you need, but then you also have great depth in case Watson is not great. You can, stream matchups with Geno and Russell Wilson, Jimmy Garoppolo. Wide receivers are like 7 deep of guys that are startable with upside. You have a stud tight end with George Kittle and pretty decent depth behind him. There's really nothing I would do with this team, if I'm being honest. So he said, I want to be able to compete for a championship, but I don't know if that's realistic. I would say it's absolutely realistic. I'd be surprised if there was, 2 or 3 better teams than yours in this league right now. Even though it's a 10-team league, I think you got to be one of the best 3 teams in the league for sure. He said, I would probably want to move off Javonte since he's coming back from a knee injury and he could lose value. I don't think that's a terrible idea. If you wanted to swap him for somebody relative value to what he's worth, who's going to be more productive, I don't think that's a bad idea. If somebody's willing to give you Saquon Barkley for him, who's in his prime and can help you win, I think that would be a good type of move to make. He also says, what should I be looking for in exchange for Javonte Williams? And he try and get another first-round pick for a rookie running back or go trade for like an older running back and some future draft capital?
Honestly, I'm just going to take Bijan and compete. Like, there's not much else I need to think about here to the 201. Maybe you add, like, maybe you move the 201 and the 210 and see if that gets you in the 108 range.
Well, that's the 111, right? Because it's a 10-team league. So the 201 is the 111 actually in a 12-team league. It's a one quarterback format, but you still could get a solid running back there. If Charbonnet gets decent draft capital, it's possible that he's there. Maybe it's RB4, whoever that ends up being. Devon A-Chain goes in the second round or something like that. You could grab somebody in that range. So Yeah,
Well,
I think you're kind of, you don't really need to do anything if you don't want to. Javonte Williams, if you want to move off of him for a more productive option because you can compete, I don't think that's a bad idea.
Yeah, I agree. Or maybe you trade Jamison Williams to get a more productive wide receiver, like maybe Jamison Williams plus. Do you think Jamison Williams plus the 210, like if you're trying to go win now, can get you like Stephon Diggs or Devontae Adams, maybe?
You might be able to get one of those guys, Adams, Diggs, Hill,
Yeah.
Cup, one of those those great aging wide receivers. Maybe you have to throw in a young receiver also, like if you have to throw in Rashad Bateman and get like a second rounder next year back in return for that on that side of the deal. I think there's a lot of moves that you could make if you need to, but I mean, again, to tell you the truth, you could just go into this season with the team that you have and probably compete because you got, I mean, Watson's going to be a top quarterback, and if he's not, you can stream. Running backs, Bijan's going to be a top 5 running back in redraft. Etienne's going to be a top 6 to 8 running back in redraft. Dobbins is a good RB2. Javonte, once he's back on the field, can be an RB2. Wide receiver, you have the first overall pick in redraft with Justin Jefferson. You have Chris Godwin, who can be a good PPR guy. Jahan Dotson, Pickens, Jamison Williams. If one of those guys hits, they can be something. Calvin Ridley will be a top 4-round redraft pick as well. And then you have more upside with Bateman and Elijah Moore. So, yeah, and then Kittle's obviously an advantage at the tight end position. So we could probably move on to the next team. We don't need to keep talking about this one.
Yeah.
Dylan, the last team of the video, 1 quarterback league, PPR format, pretty thin starting roster, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 1 tight end, and 2 flex. So no real depth needed in this type of league format. And again, another team that is just absolutely absurd. It's a 1 quarterback league. Dak and Lance is pretty much all you need. Javonte Williams, Etienne, Ramondre Stevenson, J.K. Dobbins, plus you have the 102 and 103 if you wanted to add Jahmyr Gibbs to that group. Wide receiver, A.J. Brown, Drake London, Garrett Wilson, Michael Pittman, Jerry Jeudy, Calvin Ridley. Again, 102 and 103. You could add JSN or Jordan Addison or both to that group. And then T.J. Hawkinson is your main tight end. Dylan, your team's very good. We don't really need to do too much digging on this one. You can compete right away, and you have probably the best, positional advantage at wide receiver. I'd imagine there's no team in your league that has a better receiver core than you, and probably not a better running back core than you, especially if you add Gibbs to it.
Hey, hear me out. In a 1 quarterback league, he's already got this much depth. Do you see if somebody like would do Javonte in the 102 for the 101 or the 103? Javonte in the 103 for the 101?
That might be a little too much to give up, but I think
maybe you get a piece back.
Position where you can give up stuff like that. You also probably should address your onesies, which is probably what I would do. If I was in the situation, I would take TJ Hawkinson the 111, see if that gets me Mark Andrews or something like that. I would take Dak Prescott in the 111. It's a 1 quarterback league. You should be able to get a stud quarterback with Dak in the 111.
I mean, like maybe that gets you up in a 1 quarterback league. Do you think that would get Josh Allen, or do you maybe
might get you Herbert, might get you Lamar, some of those more younger, more buy low type of guys, like because Hurts and Burrow are on the up right now. But if you get Herbert or Lamar for that, I think that's a great type of move. He has some trades listed that he made during the season. He received Calvin Ridley, Jerry Jeudy, the 111 in exchange for Nick Chubb in the 302. I love Nick Chubb, man. He's a great player, but if you're going to give me Jerry Jeudy, a 1st rounder, and Calvin Ridley for him, like I'll take that all day and twice on Sunday. He also received Javonte Williams and Michael Pittman in exchange for Mike Williams, David Montgomery, Khalil Herbert in the 402. Again, this looks like a redraft-centric format, right? The productive pieces we're going for a lot. The not productive injured pieces like Ridley and Javonte we're not going for a lot. Trey Lance in exchange for Zach Wilson in the 3rd. Pretty easy takings there. He got Chuba Hubbard and the 210 for Kirk Cousins in a 1 quarterback league. I'm kind of fine with that as well. So, I mean, thoughts on the team? This team's pretty loaded. Who should you package to upgrade at quarterback? I kind of just outlined Dak Prescott in the 111 should be able to get you something. Maybe even the 202 is all you need to pay. And then he's like solid running back depth plus what kind of RB plus wide receiver would you make to upgrade to a stud potential wide receiver 1? So if you could go after a stud wide receiver 1, would you take like Ramondre and Pittman and see what you can get CeeDee Lamb with that?
100% if that gets you CeeDee Lamb. Like you already have enough value built up on this team. Go get like superstar game breakers tied to the team, especially if they're young, like Ramondre and Pittman, like you said, or maybe it costs you Jeudy or you know what I mean? Like, or heck, like even if you have to give up Javonte to go get maybe Javonte plus a piece gets you Jonathan Taylor, like something like that. Just get rid of some of the risk on your team, because you're already going to like be in a really good spot from a value standpoint anyways, where if there's any risk affecting your production, that affects you more than the quote unquote little bit of loss of value that getting a guy that is going to be in season, is going to be ready to go by like Jonathan Taylor by the season start.
Yeah, and you have the assets to be able to, if Javonte starts to lose value and he only costs an early second rounder in week 6 because he hasn't played yet and people are wondering about the injury, you could also just go buy him back later on if you needed to. So yeah, I mean, this is the ideal position to be in a dynasty league. You have a young core, a great team, and you can afford to sacrifice value. We want to build so much value that we can eventually sacrifice it. That's the goal of what we teach here at FSC. So again, if you guys want more advice, more rankings, more content, check out the new website, flockfantasy.com. Use the promo code FSE for 30% off any of the packages. Like I said, if you buy annually, 6 months totally for free. That'll cover you from now until your rookie draft, until the redraft season, until in-season content this time next year when we're talking about 2024 rookies, all for, one price there. So definitely check all that stuff out and make sure to stay tuned to what we got going on for the rest of the week. We did a rookie mock yesterday with landing spots. We're going to be tackling some tail to tapes later on in this week. So definitely subscribe if you haven't already done so. But with that being said, peace out. We'll talk to you soon.
Why you need the money?